Oh boy, is this a disaster of epic proportions. Potentially. Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League is a real video game that is releasing very soon. And it is one of the most confusing messes I have ever seen, all the way from the very fact that it exists, to how it's launching, to the potential of it. I have a lot to say about it, but primarily, I want to talk about two things. One, why this game looks like it's going to be one of the biggest train wrecks we've ever seen. And two, the story behind this, because there's just no way to understand how anybody ever thought this was a good idea. So very quickly, for those uninformed, this game, Suicide Squad, is the new game by Rocksteady, which is the studio behind the Arkham trilogy, the Batman games, generally considered to be excellent games, modern classics, definitely some of the best licensed games, if you want to call them that, ever made. They are a very beloved developer, even if people argue which of the three is better or worse. Generally speaking, great games, right? So their new game is not a sequel to that. It's not like that at all. Even if it is still in the DC universe, it's nothing like the Arkham games. It is a live service multiplayer looter shooter, PvE, where you play as the Suicide Squad. Previews have come out for the game. They're not good. IGN says is not looking good. As this commenter bravely pointed out, you know you're doing something wrong when the IGN is outwardly negative on a preview of your game. So from what we understand in previews, as a live service game, firstly, it does have a very big story component, but a lot of people are mixed on it. It seems that a lot of it is about bad guys being forced into situations where they have to kill the good guys, as the title says, and some people have issues with that. I don't personally find that an issue. I think that the story is probably the most promising part of the game. I trust Rocksteady to tell a good story. They're great at writing characters. But when it comes to the gameplay, what people are saying is that it's very repetitive, very monotonous, very simple, despite how much style could be perceived from the gameplay that you're watching in the background. It just doesn't have a good loop. And if you're making a live service multiplayer game, what you definitely want is for the loop to stay fresh and fun all throughout. And that's a very difficult thing to do. And there's a lot of moving pieces, and not those moving pieces don't seem to be very good in this case. They don't seem to be solid. Now, to the credit of the game, just in case it actually does have a good part to it, a lot of these previews don't include some of the crazier abilities and crazier loot and whatever the potential endgame type of loop is in the game. But from what we hear, the systems that are in the game, the carrots on the sticks, they're not enough, because playing through it is not fun enough on its own, and the carrots don't seem to motivate enough for you to go through bad stuff just with the promise that once you get the carrots, the game gets better. So just generally speaking, from what we can gather here, a fundamental misunderstanding of how to make this type of game good. This is coming from a lot of people who are either Destiny addicts or addicts of other live service games. They say it's not good. And then there's a lot of people talking on the story front and on the gameplay front, very big hardcore fans of these games, of this franchise, of everything related to Rocksteady and the DCU, saying that is not good, but they have to wait and see. Before we get into all of the reasons that I'm just confused by this game, let me say it up front. Protect your wallets. Don't pre-order. So this is just a mess from top to bottom. This game was announced in 2020, which means it's been in development for at least 5 to 6 years, depending on what you call development. For a long time, we weren't really sure what it was going to be. It looked like a progression of the Arkham games, but with multiplayer, and we really weren't sure what it was going to be until we started seeing leaks of menus with Season 1 battle passes, and until we got a good look at the absolutely horrible UI that's in this game. And it's very much looking like just a enormous mistake where we get to see one of gaming's best studios, according to many people, myself included, fall. You know, they were MIA for a long time, and now they're just gone, right? Now we have to wait for the redemption arc, because it's all but guaranteed that this game is going to be not good. And I'm not just saying that because it's not the type of game that they normally make, but because as a live service looter shooter, this doesn't look that good. And that's not even half of it. Even if it were really good, this is not a space that's lacking for good games. Is why this whole thing is just so confusing. So let's imagine together for a second how a game like this ever came to exist. Because option one is that the games part of Warner Brothers said, we need a live service game. We need something to compete in that space because we don't have any big hitters there. What can we get going? And they tapped Rocksteady. And instead of letting them make more critically acclaimed and perfectly good in sales single-player games that also bring a lot of like good public perception to Warner Brothers as a publisher and as a company, they told them to make this live service game, which I would classify as a misuse of talent. But it wouldn't stop there. Not only did they choose Rocksteady to make it, but they chose the Suicide Squad as the franchise, a franchise that has never really had the highest track record of being successful despite how much marketing has been put into it. I would argue that the Suicide Squad does not sell copies of a game or of a movie on the strength of it being the Suicide Squad, right? Think of Guardians of the Galaxy. That's a very recognizable franchise, brand, whatever you want to call it. The video game did quite well, but still not enough for Square Enix to consider it a success. Suicide Squad does not have even close to the same pull as Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy did not come out at a time like this. We are at a peak of people just kind of shying away, pushing out the comic book MCU, DCU stuff. We're kind of tired of it. They're performing the worst that they've ever performed. And on top of that, you're placing this huge, expensive project from your best developer onto a franchise that by itself really doesn't have any impact. That would be very dumb. But if you were doing it this way, what are you really banking on for the game to be successful? Since I don't think that the brand, the franchise, or the characters involved here are really enough to push it, you're banking on the live service nature of the game and bringing in a lot more of those DC properties that people like into it and having that be successful in the long term. And the other thing you're banking on is that people are going to want to play this game because it's made by Rocksteady, because it's made by a developer that is very well beloved in the gaming community. But if you wanted to sell the game on the strength of the developer, why on earth would you have them make something that is completely different to the things that people associate with that developer? This is not a single-player Metroidvania. This is not highly atmospheric and really a good representation of the character that is also just a great video game. No, this is a live service shooter. So you're banking on people wanting to play a game because of the developer, despite it being nothing like anything the developer has done before, in a market that's already overly saturated. Brilliant. The other option is that Rocksteady wanted to make this game, and they wanted to make it Suicide Squad. And because they have the pull that they do, Warner Brothers eventually gave them the green light. In that case, Warner Brothers is dumb for giving them the green light, and Rocksteady seems to be a little confused because it definitely doesn't feel, especially from the previews, like a game that has the passion and the soul of those Batman games in it. So I don't understand what's going on, and maybe if that is the case, if option 2 is the real option, we are just witnessing the pure decline of a studio that we all loved before, and that's very sad. But what about the actual game? What about its release? Well, given the public perception of it, and especially given everything I was talking about, superheroes / supervillains, not very trendy right now. People don't like this. It's in an oversaturated market. A lot of people feel like it just doesn't look good. What was the game plan here? Well, I'm pretty sure that they're going to release a pretty mediocre game with the intention of really pumping it out through the seasons that they already have projected. Since you can't bang on Harley Quinn and the character that people call the Shark Guy selling your game, you're going to wait for Joker and Peacemaker and, I don't know, some evil version of Batman or something to come in as characters throughout the seasons. Mark my words, there will be a Season 1 that includes a very iconic, recognizable character, and there will be a marketing push about how you can buy the game, and it's going to include this new character for free, because they're going to have to try and, like, bring this back after release. So buying this at release really is only for beta testers. Sorry, I meant hardcore fans. Because there's no way that with all of the negative press that's surrounding this game, and the lackluster marketing that's been going into it, not to mention the years of confusion and miscommunication around it, is this game gonna be big on release. If it's gonna be big, it's gonna not be in the way that they want it. So I'm pretty sure that the game plan that Warner Brothers has at the moment is, how much can we recover over time through the seasons? How much can we milk whales on this thing eventually? So I'm also predicting that the game's going to be around for a while, because that's the game plan. So even if it fails terribly, I don't think they're going to like cancel it out of the gate. I don't think that in 6 months we're going to have like a Babylon's Fall situation and people are going to say like, oh, we're shutting down the servers. No, they need to make money back on this very expensive game that's been in development for so long. So they have to keep pumping out stuff at least enough to recover some of the cost. And you know, it's a bit of a sunk cost fallacy, which is probably how this entire thing even happens. Like, it was probably the worst case of sunk cost fallacy in video game history, of just, this is a bad idea from so many different perspectives, but by the time they got to considering those bad ideas, they kept saying, well, we're already this far. And then 5 years later, here it is. But it's going to be such an interesting case. Like when actual journalists get in on this and start documenting what happened for this game to exist. Because it's really a question of, like, how many idiots does it take to make this many mistakes in a boardroom? There were so many green lights that needed to be given at so many steps of this project, and they all are red flags. How did this happen? And I can't wait to see that. That's going to be tense. But you should be warned. As interesting as this game is, it's gonna be bad. Please wait for reviews. I'll play it if it's like middling. If it gets like a ton of 6s, that might be an interesting thing to dissect. But if this just tanks, I'm not even gonna touch this. But play it or not, I'm gonna be keeping my eyes on this like a hawk and digging as much as I can to find out what's going on with it. So if you want to hear more about that, remember to subscribe. Also, you should subscribe because I make good videos. You can go check out the channel. What a sad day for this to be happening, but what a good time to remember that you definitely should not buy or pre-order a game that looks this bad. Wait for reviews. If you really want to play it, you can play it later on when it's better. Don't let the curiosity get the best of you of like finding out how broken it is or finding a hidden gem. Just protect your wallets, guys. This does not look good. I've been Mug Thief. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you very soon.